And then the one. Progress.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our regular council meeting for Monday, May the 11th. Before we begin, I would ask that if you're able, that you stand and go out for international day. We would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging that the town of Shelburne resides within the traditional territory and ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, Chippewa, and the people of the Three Fires Confederacy. These traditional territories upon which we live, work, play, and learn are steeped in rich Indigenous history and traditions, and it is with this statement that we declare to honor and respect the past and present connection of Indigenous peoples with this land, its waterways, and resources. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interests? No? Okay. All right, so that takes us to our minutes from the April 27th meeting, which were included in the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve those as presented? By Councillor Bichardi, seconded by...
Go that way, I can't.
Right, yes, Deputy Mayor Hall. Any discussion on those? All in favor? Carried. All right, on to public question period. Any questions this evening?
Not sure you throw a
Okay.
letter.
That may or may not get pulled. I mean, we can pull it. It's at the end of the agenda. Okay. All right. Nothing was submitted
Yes, sir.
online. Okay. Okay, so with that, we are joined this evening by Murray Short of RLB Auditors to take us through our draft 2025 financial statements. Hey Murray, how you doing?
Oh, good, thanks. How are you?
Good, good. Turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will share my screen, and as mentioned, here to present the draft audited financial statements. So they should be popping up momentarily here. So as we have in the past, I'll go through the PowerPoint presentation. It does have the primary statements within the financial statements that were included in Council's package. If there are any questions on anything outside of what I cover in the PowerPoint presentation, I'm happy to answer those as well. But as mentioned, the PowerPoint does have the primary statements, so I'll try and address things as we go. So with that said, just a bit of an agenda for the presentation. I'll talk about the general kind of planning elements of our audit, and then get into our audit report and walk through the financial statements, including the graphs that we present each year, and then just talk about some next steps in terms of finalization. So in terms of the audit overview, our final materiality for our audit was $820,000. That's kind of the number that allows us to sign off on our audit report. So we do need to set a value that allows us to kind of determine that the financial statements are materially correct. In terms of the audit plan itself, we did provide a letter to council back in the fall, which would have highlighted some of the elements of our audit plan in terms of risks, in terms of materiality and accounting standards, and some other things that we communicated in that letter. And happy to report that there were no changes to our audit plan from what was communicated to council at that time. And also happy to communicate that the audit went smoothly and was very straightforward. So thank you very much to your finance department for that. As you can see on screen, no internal control deficiencies to communicate. We had no independence issues with respect to our being able to sign off on our independent auditor's report. And 2 minor adjusting entries made and 1 unadjusted difference. So that's basically as clean as it goes when it comes to municipal audits. So again, thank you to your finance team for their great work throughout the year and of course, during our audit itself. So the audit report is a 2-page report at the start of the draft financial statements. There's a lot of information in that audit report, but these 2 bullets kind of summarize the key points for today's discussion. It is a clean audit opinion, so we've done the work we've needed to do under Canadian generally accepted auditing standards in order to confirm that the financial statements are presented fairly in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So that is the clean audit opinion that you're looking for from us. We, as I said, no concerns in terms of the conduct of the audit, the cooperation received from your staff or anything along those lines, and nothing that would lead us to anything other than that clean audit opinion. The first statement just after the audit report is the statement of financial position, or in the business world that we call your balance sheets, showing the assets, liabilities, and the overall accumulated surplus. And so as I scroll to that, it's going to be fairly small on the screen, so I apologize. But I'll just highlight a few key things. So you can see the cash position of the municipality has increased by about 7.2 million dollars year over year. So that's a strengthening overall of the financial position of the municipality. The other financial assets up at the top, there are some swings, portfolio investments down, so there are just some GICs included in there. Taxes receivable up slightly, but not too much of a concern from that standpoint. And accounts receivable, you can see, is up pretty substantially, about $1.6 million. That's a combination of a number of things. Some outstanding receivables related to automated speed enforcement revenues, HST, and water wastewater revenues. So those all being up led to an overall increase in accounts receivable. In the liability section, you can see liabilities in total pretty comparable at about $24 million. But there is a bit of a change in some of the balances. So accounts receivable is up by about 2.4 million. That's really just timing of payables going out the door. Some significant payables outstanding this year, less so last year. Deferred revenue is your development charges and gas tax reserve funds. They're down somewhat. You did spend more money out of your development charges reserve fund this year, and so that did draw that balance down somewhat. And then long-term debt, you can see down by about 750,000 or so, just with the regular repayments on the loans that are held by the municipality. So when we compare the financial assets to the liabilities, we wind up with net financial assets of about $20 million, up by almost $21 million, up by about $9 million from the year before. Again, strengthening the financial position of the municipality, including that improvement in cash that I mentioned. In the non-financial assets section at the bottom, the vast majority of that is your tangible capital assets. And because of contributed assets that we'll see on a future page of about $9.2 million, in addition to the money that the municipality spent on its own investments in its infrastructure, in total tangible capital assets up by about 11 million year over year, net of amortization on those assets. So in total, then the accumulated surplus up by about $20 million, and we'll see that when we get to the statement of operations. Before we get there, though, I do have our first graphs coming up here. So this is the comparison of cash equivalents. So this is your cash and investments as compared to the cash outflows of the municipality in the year. And so the green line is the town of Shelburne, And so this 202.8% means that you have basically 2 times the annual cash outflows that the municipality would have or had in 2025 you were holding in cash at the end of the year. Obviously, a lot of that is is in your reserves and reserve funds, and so it's not money that you're going to spend all in the year, but it just shows the kind of relative portion of your cash relative to the amount of cash outflows that you have. The blue line is the average of other municipalities. You can see it's only about 100%, so your financial position a fair amount stronger than the average of our other clients. Taxes receivable. Again, the green line is the town of Shelburne. This is comparing your taxes receivable at the end of the year versus the total taxes that the municipality collects, both for its own purposes as well as for the county and school boards. And so that amount being about 12.2%. So 12.2% of the total amount of taxes that the municipality collects is sitting as receivable at the end of this year. And you can see that it is somewhat higher than the average of our municipalities, but by about 2%. It's not a huge difference. And consistent with our other municipal clients, that number has been creeping up. We've seen it pretty steadily over the last 5 years. The tax receivable has kind of crept up, I think, with just, you know, financial constraints and people maybe prioritizing other payments. So across the board, it seems to be fairly consistent that taxes receivable are climbing up in many municipalities, and you're fairly similar in that respect. Capital asset additions. This is comparing your additions, the green line, versus your total tax revenue. So for many of the rest of the graphs that we'll see, we're comparing against total tax revenue to try and normalize for the size of different municipalities. And generally, you know, your expenditures are generally fairly comparable, with 2022 and 2025 being years where you had more significant additions. Part of the additions this year, as mentioned, were contributed assets related to a new subdivision. And so that's part of the reason for the spike you see in 2025. And then this graph just shows capital asset additions versus budget and versus amortization. Amortization is kind of the diminishment or decrease of the value of your capital assets over time because of kind of wear and tear, and basically to account for the fact that you need to kind of reinvest in your infrastructure. So we would like to see the blue line be a fair amount ahead of the or higher than the yellow in each case, and you can see that that is the case in each of the past 5 years. The green bar is budget. You were actually kind of above budget with capital asset additions, but again, that's partly because of the contributed assets in the year, which totaled about $9.2 million. So the statement of operations is the next primary statement after the statement of financial position. In the business world, it would be called your income statement. So it shows the revenues and expenses and culminates in the accumulated surplus at the bottom. And again, it's fairly small, but hopefully it's visible for people watching on screen here. But I will just mention, again, a number of the lines, but not all of them. So tax revenue up by about 5.6% and fairly close to, but a bit below budget. Fees and user charges pretty comparable. The grants line you can see is down. The organization did receive a fair amount of capital grants in 2024, less so this year. And so that's why that amount is down, but it is very comparable to what you budgeted to receive. And then other income is up in part because of those contributed assets that I mentioned. So with the new subdivision coming on, there was about $9.2 million that has to hit your revenues. And so it's kind of included in other income. There's also the automated speed enforcement and development charges were up this year. Those are all kind of shown in note 10 of the financial statements, but basically you did draw down your development charges more this year than last year, and that money went into capital investments as well. In terms of expenditures, just talk about a few that stand out. You can see protection services down very significantly from prior year as well as below budget. That is almost entirely because of your OPP contract and the savings there. Transportation services and environmental services both up from last year, although environmental services is below budget. The transportation services up because of winter control and other costs. Some increase in staffing that we'd expect to see with kind of the seasonality and variability of winter conditions and the impact on transportation staffing. And then in terms of environmental services, just kind of maintenance costs that tended to push that amount up from last year. So with the 9.2 million in tangible capital assets contributed to the municipality, that does increase your surplus quite substantially, and that's the reason for the $20 million increase in accumulated surplus, or a big part of the reason for that increase. So this graph shows the expenditures by department. Not surprisingly, transportation and environmental services, or your water, wastewater, being the two largest, but then fairly reasonable expenses within the other departments as well, and consistent with what we'd expect to see. And then this next slide just shows the same numbers, but over a 5-year comparison, a 5-year timeline. And so you can just see the relative percentages. They do change somewhat from year to year, but overall fairly consistent from one year to the next. So the statement of changes in net financial assets basically takes the surplus on the year and then backs out the capital asset activity, and ultimately it culminates in the change in your net financial assets. So your net financial assets did increase by about $9 million. And you can see that 9.2 million here is the contributed tangible capital assets. But on top of that, the municipality spent about 4.6 million in addition. So a total increase of capital assets of about $13.8 million on the year. So again, strengthening of the financial position or net financial asset position of the municipality by about 9 million up to about 20.7. And then the next statement after that is the statement of cash flows, and it tells a similar story, just with a lot more detail. And so because of the overall surplus, we would expect to see that you would have positive cash flow from your operating activities. And you can see that here at the $12.2 million. Most municipalities would have positive cash flow from operating activities, because that's then what they would use to spend on tangible capital asset additions, long-term debt repayments, and so on. And so you can see that just below. So repayment of long-term debt of about 763,000, 4.6 million spent on capital asset additions, and then a bit of a decrease in the investment. So net of all of those things is an increase in cash of about $7 million. Again, highlighting the point that the financial position of the municipality has strengthened in the year. Two more schedules to show. The schedule of accumulated surplus breaks out the overall accumulated surplus of about 115 million. Again, that's up by the 20 million on the year, and breaks it out by different amounts. So your investment in capital assets is the most significant component of that, but there are various other fund balances for the library board, Senator Dufferin Recreation Complex, the BIA, fire department, and so on. And then the reserves and reserve funds. And this is where the strengthening of cash, the cash position of the municipality is highlighted. You can see the reserves increasing from 19.3 million up to 27.2. So again, that's that strengthening of the financial position in the year. We do have a note down at the bottom that each year the surplus, the operating surplus that the town has, does wind up being transferred into reserves. So you will not see a general fund surplus in this section. Any surplus that the municipality has goes into reserves to be used in a future year. And the last schedule I'll show, and then there's one more graph, is the schedule of deferred revenue. So again, this is monies you've received that you haven't yet spent. The reason that these reserve funds, the development charges and gas tax reserve funds, are in deferred revenue and not in the accumulated surplus is because they're restricted by external sources. So the Development Charges Act and your gas tax agreement. And as I mentioned earlier, the organization did spend a fair amount out of development charges, about $3.5 million. That was in excess of the amounts coming in terms of DCs received and investment income. And so your development charges reserve fund down to about 12.2 million. Gas tax reserve fund up slightly because you only spent about 117,000 out, but the amounts coming in from the grant as well as investment income over 300,000. There are some other smaller amounts, prepayments of tax for the 2026 year, but received in 2025, about 108,000. And then a bit of recreational revenues prepaid in advance that will be earned in 2026. So in total, deferred revenues down to about 13.3 million from 15.1 in 2024. And lastly, in terms of graphs, is the graph showing reserves and reserve funds. So this graph combines the obligatory reserve funds, the development charges and gas tax, with the reserves and reserve funds we saw in the accumulated surplus. And again, we're comparing the total tax revenue, but Shelburne's total reserves and reserve funds to be carried forward for future use, totaling about 372% of your total tax revenue, whereas the average of our other municipal clients is about 211%. So very strong financial position. I do want to qualify that by saying, as accountants, we're looking back. So we're looking at kind of at your year end, December 31st, 2025. It's more the purview of engineers to kind of determine how much you should have to cover future expenditures. That's more their area of expertise than mine. And so I can't really comment on how much you have relative to what you need, only that you tend to have more in reserves and reserve funds than other municipalities, or at least those that we work with. So strong financial position, but I'm no expert on what your future expenditures and investment needs would be. So in terms of next steps, with council's approval of the financial statements, as we would hope to happen today, that will allow us to have management sign a representation letter, which allows us to finalize the financial statements. And that would then allow us to submit the financial information return to the ministry on your behalf by its due date of May 31st. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Murray. Gary, did you want to add anything? Okay. All right. All right. Everybody's good? Good. Okay, we're solid. All right. Well, thank you, Murray. As it requested, we'll get a resolution here to approve the 2025 financial statements as presented by RLV. Is there a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Sample, seconded by Councillor Donato. All in favor? It's carried. All right. Thank you, sir.
Great. Thank you. Take care.
All right, that takes us to council inquiries. Are there any inquiries this evening? Councillor Gashari.
Yeah, a couple of inquiries, seeing as how we just finished our 2025 budget presentation or audit. 2026 is an interesting year because when we did our budget for 2026, we did not anticipate that crazy man from the south of the border starting a war and hiking up gas prices. I was wondering if we could ask Carrie if there's been contingencies put into the budget for this or how we're managing that. Yes.
Sure. Thank you, and through the mayor. So we went in and had a look at where we've landed so far, and we actually did increase the fuel budget across all departments 45% from over 2024's budget or 2024's budget. Currently, we're sitting at having used 31% of that budget. Now, having said that, majority of the summer with the parks and recreation and the fuel that we'll use in the parks and that this year. We're hoping that we should land relatively close to what we budgeted. So,
Great, and the second one is for Jim. Jim, some signage at the trail crossings on Victoria and west end of town on 89. Can we get something put up there, seeing as how people are using those for bikes and walking dogs and stuff?
Through your worship, we do have one trail crossing sign on Main Street. We believe it's ours. It could be the county since it is their trail. We have to check in with them on that. We are planning trail crossing signs anyway. Will and our operations end of it, Parks and Rec has been looking into that to implement signs already for that crossing, just to give a pre-warning. But it is there, so that works.
Okay, sure, thanks.
Anybody else? No.
No, just not.
Okay.
I'll get off tonight.
All right, so we'll move on into reports. So our first report is from our town planner, Steve Weaver, and I think Steve's joining us virtually this evening. And this is with respect to a sign bylaw variance request for 802 Main Street East. Can you hear us, Steve?
I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, all good.
Great. Well, thank you for accommodating me online. I do have a few quick slides just to give a visual overview of this application. Share that now. Can you see the slides?
Yeah.
All right. So this is application A2602 filed by Priority Permits. As the mayor mentioned, it's for 802 Main Street East. This is the existing Tim Hortons restaurant, the one on the east side of town. You'll possibly know the plaza as its traditional name, which is Wigglesworth Plaza. There's an L-shaped building on the property. Was comprehensively, the site and building were comprehensively updated, and the Tim Hortons was added in about 2013 to 2014. The Tim Hortons is going through some refresh of the facade of the building, as well as some interior updates. And in conjunction with that, they are also updating their signs. So this is the existing conditions. No major changes to the two main elevation signs. You can see on the top left image and the bottom image, those are identical signs at the corner of the building facing towards County Road 124 and towards the intersection at Highway 89. Those are both permitted under the bylaw because the bylaw permits one sign per business frontage, and this building has technically frontage on two streets. The area of change that required the variance is on the north elevation. You can see there's a bit of a placeholder there for a sign, but a sign was never installed previously on the north elevation, other than a small incidental sign that just lists some of the types of products that you can get at Tim Hortons. So this is where a new sign is proposed as the third fascia sign on the building. So again, just to emphasize that again, the two longer red bars on the site plan here on the air photo, those would be replaced like for like with new Tim Hortons signs on a different backing. And then the new sign is this maple leaf logo with the word Tim's on it, which is a smaller sign on the north elevation. This is what that looks like for the two existing signs to be replaced. Again, it's really just the backing that's being replaced with a different material. And then in terms of the new type of sign over the drive-through that would be added, you can see they've removed the bar of incidental sign that's there currently, and essentially just adding a new fascia sign. So replacing the incidental sign with a new fascia sign. It's a minor request, but it does trigger a slight variance to the bylaw because it's technically a third fascia sign, whereas the bylaw permits two. So I've summarized more details about the application in my report, but we reviewed it under the same criteria as we have for all of these types of applications, and that's really to test whether it's keeping with the intent of the bylaw, and whether there would be any impacts potentially to any other properties, and whether it's also fair with respect to other similar businesses in terms of the extent of signage permitted. I will note that the two main Tim Hortons signs on the two main fascias, they're both well within the permitted area of the sign bylaw. So about 5% of each of those fascias, whereas the bylaw permits up to 10% on each of those. So they're not utilizing the full extent of signage on those fascias that they're allowed to. In other similar contexts, variances have allowed a smaller size sign on the third fascia. And in this case, it would be even less than what those prior variances have allowed at only about, it's less than 2.5% of that north fascia area with the drive-through. We did consider the future change in land use that's likely to occur on the block to the north. It's a mixed commercial residential block. We don't have any details yet in terms of a formal application for that vacant block of land, but there is a lot of space there to be able to provide separation from this sign, which would be illuminated. But given its scale, it's not likely to create any negative effects, and that site itself has room to introduce some tree plantings and fencing to help to mitigate any of those impacts. We are recommending a couple of conditions. One, that this is just for a third fascia sign with a maximum of 2.5% of that north fascia area. That they still require a sign permit if council approves this variance, and then the building permit as well for the method of fixing the sign to the fascia itself. So I'll stop sharing my screen there and open it up to any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Questions for Steve? Was quite a bunch for me. Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Steve, as you say, it is minor. As far as I'm concerned, I certainly have no issue with it. Particularly as you've set out, I mean, it's 2.5% size on that side, so it's rather insignificant. But I guess from their perspective, it will highlight traffic coming southbound into town, just to let them know that there's a gas location there. So yeah, I mean, it makes sense from a practical point of view as well. So yeah, I'm quite happy with it. This is good. Okay, so the recommendation is to approve the request for variance subject to the conditions that Steve set out. So the size, and then the requirement to obtain a sign permit and a building permit from the county. So mover and seconder for that, moved by Councillor Guichardi, seconder Councillor Sample. All in favor? Carried. All right. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, thank you all.
Take care. All right, and the next report is from our Director of Legislative Services, dealing with noise bylaw exemption requests. Jennifer, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Through the mayor, staff have received a request for an exemption to the town's noise bylaw. The event is scheduled for June 2nd from approximately 4 p.m. to midnight and is a family wedding celebration. The noise bylaw restricts amplified sound at all times where it disturbs residents. It specifically prohibits operation of sound amplification devices that disturb nearby dwellings, noise that is audible at a point of reception. However, council has the authority to grant exemptions subject to conditions. So the event is being held in a residential neighborhood. It's scheduled on a weekday, which raises a few concerns that relate to early morning work schedules, school-end impacts for children in the area, and general expectation of quieter evenings during the week. Outdoor like music carries in residential areas. There is potential for neighborhood disruption if it's extended too late. So staff have recognized, the cultural significance of the event, the importance of supporting community celebrations and diversity, and the fact that the resident has reached out for an exemption when most do not.
Yeah.
So their request for music until midnight on weekday presents a bit of risk for nuisance complaint and noise complaint. Staff are recommending a balanced approach to allow the event, but to set some conditions and parameters surrounding the event being held in a residential area. So the conditions suggested, is to permit the event on June 2nd from 4 till 11, with reduced volume after 10 p.m. All amplified music is to end by 11 p.m. Guests should depart quietly and orderly, and no fireworks or additional noise sources are permitted. Food truck generators, if applicable, to be minimized and directed away from homes. Road occupancy permit is required if a food truck is to be parking on the street. The applicant is to provide a contact number during the event, and understanding that resident complaints may result in enforcement staff being visit. Bylaw staff are on shift that evening and have been notified of this request, so they will be able to be in the area. That ends my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
So. I'm gonna ask the question. So if they fire off fireworks, even if bylaws there, for what? Do they? Done. What happened?
So we do have, our new AMPS bylaw, so it allows the officers to now issue a notice of violation in addition to issuing a fine. We have set fines set for that.
And I guess further to that, I mean, the last condition that you've included is that any substantiated complaints may result in an immediate revocation of the exemption that we're provided. So I mean, if that sort of thing starts to occur, then I guess we should got the whole thing, and that could be enforced on the spot. So.
Yeah.
And have been released, they invited all their neighbors.
Yes.
I guess the other side of it, if the neighbors object, what happens at that point?
To the mayors, so the neighbors will be required to file a bylaw complaint. Really, it's not like a public meeting, or there's no opportunity to engage the neighbors. They are being invited to the event. So for them to object or approve, if that's not really a condition related to this request, right? They would have to file a complaint, have to engage bylaw officers to attend the area.
Officers are already there, big deal.
I do the least that I was heartened by the fact that they actually reached out to them, which makes me feel a little better, and I think I have a little more confidence in granting this based on the fact that they were responsible from the get-go to reach out, and so.
I think it's winning.
Yeah. Okay. The neighbors have been invited.
Yes.
Okay.
If it's any, I don't know what the word consolation at all, but so these events take place quite frequently and regularly, and bylaw officers have been engaged in the past in relation to parking concerns, food trucks on, they have, this is a regular, not a common occurrence, but it does happen regularly.
This happened quite a bit.
In the summer months, so they are actively aware and are engaged in the area. They do work their shift, right, so.
But this is the first time.
This is the first time someone has requested.
Yeah, last year was just.
And that's what I'm hoping will happen in the future, because I know they happened in the past without permission.
Yeah.
And now that this is happening, I hope the rest of the people will wake up and start applying for these permits, or so that we eventually get down to doing it. Because it's pretty disheartening when you get complaints because neighbors knew nothing, and all of a sudden they have all this noise and whatnot going on around them.
Said most of them no.
And in some neighborhoods, not enough.
Okay. Well, staff recommendation is to authorize the exemption based on the list of conditions that Jennifer set forth there. Thoughts? Want to make a motion?
Yeah,
I'll
sure.
make it.
Moved by Councillor Donato. Second by Councillor Bouchardy.
We both couldn't invite you. We both couldn't invite, no, I'm kidding.
You getting invited? You should.
All right, all in favor? Carried. Okay, thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, perfect. As you say, it's a balanced approach, so let's hope it is off successful. All right, any notices of motion for this evening? No? Okay, so that takes us into our communications section. Is there anything there that anybody wants to pull? Councilor Bichardi?
I'd like to pull number 4, letter of support and for their motion, asking the province to stop their intention of amalgamating the conservation authorities. I'll just read the recommendations here. Sorry. The council, the one that jumps out to me is this resolution to forward, the line before that. At a minimum, the province immediately pause and the text is so small, sorry. Pause the proposed consolidation of CVC into an authority, a regional conservation authority until full and meaningful consultation has occurred with watershed municipalities and mayors.
Yeah.
This is getting ran through.
We've had
We did,
other
we
discussion
did
on
one.
this.
yeah, we did something similar for the Nottawasaga and Lake Simcoe, so.
Do you want to second that one, Councilor Bernardo?
Sure. I doubt the province will listen to us.
All right, so we have a motion of support moved by Gachardi, seconded by Bernardo. All in favor? It's carried.
The other one is number 7, Malton Hills, school bus cameras, crossing arm cameras. Just petitioning the province to have a province-wide mandate on putting cameras in all school buses at the crossing, when the crossing arm is down.
I'll second that.
Second that as well.
I was gonna bring it up.
All right.
Okay.
All in favor? It's carried as well. Okay. Is that it on your list?
Oh, sorry, yes, okay. And I apologize that.
Screen.
Yeah, I've got to get me. My glasses checked.
Anybody else? Well, because I know we have some residents here, I will pull number 3, which is the public presentation regarding the Pine Grove Road upgrades and urbanization. So there was a public information meeting on April 21st. Council received a sort of a summary update from Jim via email after that. And then there are there's some correspondence in there from Fred and Carolyn Netsch, who have joined us this evening. Jim, I'll let you provide some comments as well, but I'll just mention at this point, we've received the letter. I don't think at this point there probably is much more information to provide other than what was discussed that night, because as I understand, we're still waiting on Hydro to get back to us with their cost estimate. So at this point, it's a bit of an academic discussion until we can see that, but we're still expecting those for June.
Tree worship, yes, that was the last estimate that we had from Hydro, was they'd be back to us in June. They were in contact with us May 4th for some additional information. They requested our CAD files. We gave them the drawings for that's going out for the RFP, or has gone out for the RFP, so they have that up to date. So they come back with a few comments, but they still haven't got back to us on costing there yet. So we're working with our costing that SBA has worked up for us on historically how that's gone and SBA's experience, which the town, if the request is to put the above ground hydro underground, the town would be on the hook for half of that cost, or Hydro will pay half of the cost, and the other half is up to the municipality for the residents. It was presented at public PIC meeting. that there is a possibility there, that it could be funded through a local improvement charge. As the way the funding is going for this project so far, similar to, the north end, the Sister Street projects that were organized a number of years ago, over several years. There was loans taken out for that project. Those loans come off our books this year. And our Pine Grove costs go on there from what we've estimated, but we did, since we're not associated with Hydro One, we don't get revenue from Hydro One, so we don't put anything in the reserve for replacements of that. That's not included, similar to the Sister Street projects. They're still above ground hydro up there. We were in contact with Hydro early, after we did our street review, just to notify them your poles are cracked and weathered. So they are looking pretty tough, but as the contract goes with the RFP, even if this does move forward, Hydro One said it'd be much later in the year. All time before they could get in there. Contractors don't like two contractors being on site. Hydro One would be doing their own work, not as part of this project. So just for liability reasons and everything else, it wouldn't be able to be on site anyway. But with directional drilling, they've come a long way. We've had Whiteman's over the last two years, covered the whole town, which I didn't think was possible, and they actually did pull it off. So,
With pretty minimal disruption.
Yeah. But we do have a number of different pools that we're pulling from. So we do have OCIF funding that we've been saving up along with gas tax over a number of years. You have 5 years to use that. This is our last year, so it does have to go ahead that way. We're also pulling for the water and sewer. We're pulling for our reserves there to replace that infrastructure in the street through the asset management program. And then we will have a loan for what we're estimating. Right now, it all depends on how our RFP comes back. We're estimating a 1.3 million cost that we're gonna have to put a loan out for. So again, Sister Street's come off, the Pine Grove goes on this year, so.
Okay. There's other utilities on those poles too.
Tree worship, that was noted by Hydro. We did bring that up during the PIC meeting, that similar to a pole that we have out here by Tipsy Fox. There are other utilities on there, Bell and Hydro. So just because Hydro's off doesn't mean the pole's gonna be gone. They typically cut the pole off, and the other utilities stay on there until it comes up under their infrastructure to remove that. So they did come back with that comment on May 4th to us as well, but they're not the only ones on the pole, including the town. We also have streetlights that are on those poles too. So if you go underground, then that's gonna necessitate us approximately $80,000 that we're looking at there for new streetlights every 45 meters, as per our design criteria, with new fixtures. So.
Have we
No, go ahead.
have we notified Rogers and Bell that underground has been requested?
Hydro One has been in touch with them, so, but we haven't heard anything back from them either, so.
And are we expecting to hear anything back from them?
I'm expecting by Hydro's last email that we will. They're talking about the possibility of a combined trench, but that's not confirmed. That would be up to the other utilities again, not Hydro as well, so.
And Jim, when you and I talked about it once before, and I may have gotten it wrong, but I don't think so. I think you mentioned the condition of the poles is one thing you've noted. Even if those were to be replaced, were we on the hook for some of that cost as well?
Tree worship, typically no.
Okay.
That's their
Okay.
infrastructure.
Yeah,
their cost.
as it should be, but I thought that you had mentioned at one point that we would maybe still be on the hook for even just replacing wooden
Yeah,
poles, which
that's all.
didn't make any sense.
If they
Okay.
decide to go above ground, it's.
Yeah, okay. So I guess at this point, once we do get the cost estimates from Hydro, hopefully in June, then like, will there be a report to council about what that is, or?
Through your worship, if you wish, we could bring a report back to know what the cost is and what the possibilities are moving forward. From what I understand, they have been out on site looking at it, so I guess they are doing some legwork on it, but I'm not too sure we'll have the quotes next month, but that was the last estimate from Hydro One, was June was the best they could do, so.
Okay. Yeah, I think, once we know what the numbers are, if we could get a report, just setting out kind of what the options would be, I mean, including status quo, just kind of what are the options for us to consider, and then we can take a look, once we actually have real numbers to know what we're looking at, so.
And I would like Velvet Rogers to be a part of that.
Would we have to get separate estimates from them?
Through your worship, I have to see what Hydro says, since those utilities are on their proposal.
Yeah, okay,
They have more information than we would, so.
all right. Okay. All right, anything else in communications? Okay, can I get a motion then to receive those remaining items for information? Mr. Sample, second by Deputy Mayor Hall. All in favor? It's carried. And a motion for the confirming bylaw. Donato, seconded by your shirt. All in favor? Carried. And a motion to adjourn at 7:19. Donato, seconded by Councilor Sample. All in favor?
Sitting in the chair. Yeah. Mr. Mayor. I know the meeting